Hello, we are today talking about Jura at Winelist, which is one of my favourite regions in France and of wine in general. And I guess this one has a slightly self-indulgent taste for me because I'm a huge fan of Jura, as I think Isabella's as well.
Definitely.
And I really just wanted to put this tasting together. We've got these wines in very, very limited supply available on our website. And wanted to kind of talk about Jura as a region today. You can kind of jump into different parts of this video. We're going to talk through 5 wines and 5 styles, and you can buy them and taste them at home or just watch along as you feel fit. So Isabel, kick us off. What is Jura?
Jura is amazing. That's all you need to know. But Jura can be really confused with Douro, especially when you sort of pronounce them similarly. Douro is in Portugal, very different part of the world. Jura is France, and very handily, my hand is the same shape as France. So we've got Paris in the middle, and then on the very far east, just before you get to the Alps, is the region of Jura. So it's a really small little region. It's basically, they don't have any big main cities. It's a lot of farmland, woodland. It's a lot of farmers there, and it's just rustic and amazing. They do bizarre wines. Everywhere else in France is sort of very similar styles of wines wherever you go, but here they've got some really sort of wild things going on. People describe them as ugly, but wonderful, bizarre, amazing. So, which one should we start drinking?
I'm not sure where we should begin. I think we'll start with whites, but just on Jura quickly. So, Jura, I think I found is almost a bit of a kind of trade secret. I think there was, a journey you kind of go through of wine, and you like a bit of Burgundy, and then somebody will say, have you heard of this Jura thing? Or, like with natural wines as well, because there's some kind of quite funky wines we've got here. That kind of leads into it that way. So it feels a bit like a kind of secret amongst those in the know.
It is a little bit, because they have such small production as well, because it's a tiny region. They don't have many wines out there being sold, so there's only a little demand for it in terms of the whole world, but that demand for it is too big for the actual region itself. They can't grow enough grapes to supply that. So you can never find really cheap Jura wines because everyone wants to get their hands on them. But yeah, they are definitely a bit of a trade secret because everyone talks about trying funky new wines at the moment, but they've been existing for hundreds of years in Jura. This is what they've always done.
Absolutely. So do you want to give us a quick spin around what we've got here today, and then we'll go through and taste each one individually?
Perfect, okay. So we'll be starting with Chardonnay. And this one is, it's got a little bit of a spritz to it, as you can see in the bottle already. It's fizzy like a beer, it's got a solid foam on top of there. So I'm interested to see what we have there. And that one is, it's not really, this one is.
Yeah.
This one's Savagnin. So Savagnin is the typical grape variety that you have in Jura. They do a lot of Chardonnay, they do a lot of Savagnin, actually all of these grapes that we have here. So Savagnin is, it's in the same family as Traminer, Gewürztraminer. All those are in the same family, so it's similar to that, but they didn't realise that until they could DNA test actual grape to see what was the same as what. So it was a bit of a surprise when they did that. But this one's Rouillé.
Rouillé? What's Rouillé?
Rouillé basically means, in winemaking, in the past, you put the grape juice in the barrel, you just leave it there. And as the wine would shrink down, there'd be a little bit on top, which would have oxygen inside it. So that oxygen changes the wine a little bit, it oxygenates the wine, and it can give it a little bit of a weird taste. It can sometimes go vinegary, sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes it's too far. Rouillé basically means that's what they do in most of the world. It's where they constantly top the barrel up so that you don't have any oxygen inside that barrel, so you're not getting any of those weird aromas that you get from having too much oxygen in the winemaking process.
So what they're taking, essentially have a barrel which might be a kind of reserve barrel which they'll go and use that to top up all the other barrels?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that's what happens with this wine?
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a bit of a difficult one to pronounce.
Rouillé.
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 Loads of letters in there.
Lots of letters. Also, this shape is a kind of classic Jura bottle shape, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's such a lovely shape as well. Really nice and sort of traditional and classic.
Yeah.
You can always tell it's different from the sort of hard shoulder Bordeaux or the really sloping shoulder Burgundy.
So they've kind of actually borrowed for, that's more of a Burgundy style, isn't it?
That is, yeah. And then in Alsace, which is further north, you've got the really sloping one. So this is nicely sort of in between all of those styles.
Very nice. We've got Chardonnay, which is quite a standard Chardonnay, but Jura style. We've got Savagnin Rouillé.
Rouillé?
Rouillé. What's this little one in the middle?
Squat little bottle. It's so weird and tiny, this one, but this is such a classic that you get in Jura, and it's a Vin Jaune. So it's going to be a little bit unusual. What they do is, it's made in a similar way to sherry, kind of. It's called sous voile, which basically means under a veil.
Sous voile.
Sous voile. You actually pronounced a few of the letters that time. And then it's always confusing. And so what happens is when the yeast sort of floats to the top inside the barrel when you're making the wine, it creates this almost like a layer on top of the wine, like a shield. The same happens when you make sherry. So they don't top it up like in Rouillé, so it's creating a shield, but there is a lot of oxygen above there, so it does start to oxygenate the wine a little bit. So you're starting to get some flavours from sherry. It's not actually sherry, but they make them in very similar ways. This one is definitely not going full on sherry. It's just, I mean, you can see it already. It's a really sort of yellow colour. That's why it's called Vin Jaune. It means yellow wine. It's bright yellow, full of flavour.
Fantastic.
I'm excited.
And that's also, so that's 2012, and that's had 6 years sous vide.
Yeah, and you have to have, it's actually, I think it's 6.5 years,
6.5 years.
minimum for it
Okay.
to be a Vin Jaune.
Okay.
So sometimes you can get Jura wines that are almost a Vin Jaune but haven't had the full 6.5 years aged in a barrel to be a Vin Jaune.
Fantastic. So next up, we've got two reds, so 2 whites, the Vin Jaune.
Vin Jaune.
Vin Jaune.
Pronounce all the letters in that
All
one.
the letters, Vin
Almost,
Jaune.
90%.
Sous vide. And this is a Trousseau.
Yes.
Tell me about Trousseau.
Trousseau is a wonderful grape variety. So we're going on to the red wines now. Trousseau is a really popular grape variety in Jura. So like they use Sauvignon, Trousseau is just as popular. You don't really see it in much of the world, to be honest. It's very rare.
I think I've only ever had it from Jura,
Yeah, same.
but I'm a big fan when I have had it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And last up, probably along with Chardonnay, the most recognisable Pinot.
Pinot.
Pinot Noir.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They just say Pinot. It could be any of the Pinots.
It could be.
It's
You're
noir.
absolutely right. So Arbois, this is the kind of main appellation in Jura, is that right?
It is, yes. So Jura is the bigger region, and Arbois is the smaller region within that, and that's where most of their wines come from. It's actually a really unusual region because usually the whole, like in Champagne, the whole region is just on grape growing. But when you're in Jura, it's so mixed. Like one field will be grapes, the other field will be other farming things, which farmers make, barley,
All sorts.
all sorts.
Corn.
So it's really mixed up. So that's why they have such weird techniques, because they're really sort of sharing farming knowledge around rather than just focusing on grapes.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, I think we should get in for a taste. So you at home, at this stage, you can kind of jump through to different parts. If you've got one bottle in front of you, if you want to kind of taste through everything, then have a fantastic time with us, as we do as well. So let's start with the Chardonnay, the kind of biggest classic. So this producer as well also, this is how would you pronounce that?
Grange Bernard.
Grange Bernard. I've seen this on at least a few kind of London wine lists before. So I think this is probably one of the more entry-level Juras. It's certainly at the lower end of the price point compared to the other 3 we have. Again, you were talking earlier about the kind of cost of low supply of them, and the last few years in Jura have been quite bad. So these are, I think, all 2019s or 2018s, which were kind of quite small production vintages. So again, just adds to that kind of price problem as well when you've got small quantities of them. But these producer, Grange Bernard, is a lot more common, I found. So you might be able to find these in a few different places as well.
I think he's the biggest producer, I think.
May well be.
Ooh, the Chardonnay. Got a little spritz on this one.
Does have a lot of spritz.
It smells delicious. It smells a bit yeasty. I didn't want to spit that one out. It's really nice.
I swallowed a bit at the end. Cool.
A little bit champagne-y.
Do you know what, it tastes, that to me always tastes like it tastes like a sparkling wine before it's gone through the second fermentation. It's got kind of almost a toasty palate to it, but it's still kind of very appley, it's still kind of, you can tell that's a kind of cool climate Chardonnay.
It feels like what I always think of as an English sparkling wine. It's like crisp apples, yeasty. That's delicious.
Yeah, very, very nice.
There's still a spritz. It's not fizzy, but there is definitely a spritz there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the style of this is, remind me how this one's been made?
So this one has been, I think it's just made in the normal way, this one.
In the normal way.
So it will probably be topped up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like in most normal winemaking methods. The reason why they started doing wines which are topped up a bit so there's no oxidation is because people's palates are used to that. They don't always want that weird, bizarre drink. So they started making a lot of these in a region just so consumers would really like it and they could sell a lot of it because it is delicious. But they still take that extra level to make it a really great, interesting wine, that yeastiness that you're getting out of it.
Absolutely.
It's got a really nice long finish.
Really, really long finish. What would you kind of pair that with? There you go, the age-old question.
My favourite one. Ooh, food. Champagne goes with everything, and this is so champagne-y. So I think that'd be really good to start an evening off, start a little party. And champagne, it's not champagne, but sparkling wine, anything yeasty goes really well with salty foods, so like canapes, cheese, Comté cheese, which is from the same region, will be really nice.
Yeah.
Cheese straws, if you want to go a bit browsy. And yeah, anything salty.
It's definitely got.
Bready.
It's definitely got. You know, I know we're going to get on to kind of far more sherry-esque kind of flavours, but it almost starts to feel that kind of nuttiness. There's a kind of. It's like it's leading that direction.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we started with it because it's the most neutral, but it's still so interesting. This one.
Yes, it's not a kind of classic Burgundian Chardonnay really. It's definitely got some difference to it.
Yeah, which I really like about it. Wine with interest.
Yeah.
There was a top Parisian restaurant who gave one of their customers, it was like some wine writer, gave one of their customers a Chardonnay from Jura and would not tell him where it was from, and he thought it was a really expensive Burgundy, but he was like, no, just Jura Chardonnay.
There you go. Fantastic, so that's really nice. 14%, heavier ends, you know, that's got some weight to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
2018 Jura Grange Bernard Chardonnay. So next up we have the
Grange Bernard again.
Sauvignon Ouillet. So this is where we get a bit more interesting now. Walk us through it.
So Sauvignon grape variety, which is really popular in the region. I'd say most of the wines that I've had from Jura are Sauvignon. The next one that we'll have as well is also Sauvignon. Vangem is always Sauvignon. It sounds a lot like Sauvignon and looks like Sauvignon. I've had so many people come up to me and go, are you pronouncing Sauvignon wrong? Oh no, it's a different grape. So Ouillet, so this one has been topped up in the winemaking process. So it won't have any of that sort of oxidization, won't have any of that weird sherry flavour to it. I mean, I haven't smelled it yet.
So that's almost kind of like making, because when you make wine in stainless steel, you've got the advantage then of not having any kind of, none of it's kind of evaporating through the outside of it. It's, you know, perfect container. You're almost kind of mimicking a kind of stainless steel production technique in a way, I guess. Whereas,
yeah.
And does that have a kind of, you know, what do you expect as a result of that? What's going to happen to, you know, what's the smelling like? How's it affecting it?
The colour on it is really nice. It's got almost like a pink tinge.
Absolutely.
Can you see that? It's really, really light, but like a weird sort of tinge to it. It's definitely not this table.
Yeah, no, it's definitely on the table, absolutely.
But there is a really interesting smell there. It is a bit of that sort of, what year is this? 2018. It smells really aged. It smells like a wooden barrel. Like the inside of a really old barrel.
It does, it has a bit of kind of muskiness to it.
Which is great because you're getting a really lovely wine that's sort of more adjusted to many consumers, where it's not really sort of oxidised, but you're still getting all that interest as well from the barrel.
So interesting, I found that on the nose, not quite as, it wasn't jumping out as much for me. I don't know whether it's just kind of blindness I've got some of those smells. But on the palate, so kind of rich on the palate, that's really, really beautiful. I love that.
That is wonderful. They've caught it so nicely there, because I think if they didn't do the Ouillet method of topping it up, that would be overpowering. It would feel too much like a sherry. But they've just stopped it where it feels elegant still, but it's so rich.
Yeah.
nutty, it's got a crunch to it.
Yeah,
It's like having a whole meal, that one. Really, really nice. But yeah, you can really smell like a proper wooden barrel. It smells like a forest. It's in the middle of a forest where it's grown.
Yeah. Oh, I love that on the palate.
That's wonderful.
Actually, almost kind of more fruit kind of coming through there, and almost a bit of kind of florality about it as well. Really nice and complex.
That'd be really good with food. Because it's so savoury, that flavour.
Yeah.
It'd be really good with food.
See that, for me, I could just drink that by itself.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
good with food, but obviously I've just done.
Also happy drink by itself. Fantastic. So that is Sauvignon Ouillet. You get a French lesson along with this as well, which is embarrassing coming from me. But fortunately, you're giving a French lesson.
French passport.
Yeah, French passport. So, bottle 2. Still kind of, we've gone through a couple of dry white wines, which I think, no matter what your kind of palate so far, you could taste both of those and you'd be able to say they're dry style white wines and
Yeah.
a bit different to usual, but nothing completely out there.
Yeah. I think 90% of people that I know would really enjoy those,
Yeah.
but also really enjoy that sort of different crunch quality they have.
Yeah,
Really great wines.
fantastic. So, short little bottle. So also only 620ml,
Yeah,
which I think,
you only get that in Jura, you don't get that anywhere else. It's a very bizarre little law that they have. Very weird. But Vin Jaune, so it's same
Vin Jaune.
Sauvignon grape variety, same as the last one. But this one has been in the barrel sous vide method. So it's had that yeast sort of cover it up and act like a shield from the oxygen, but still let a little bit of oxygen in there. So it's sort of not giving it too much to spoil it, but just kind of shielding it a little bit, under veil. And then it's been left there for 6.5 years. They always describe this as the easiest wine to make. I mean, it's not really. But it's the way that their ancestors did it. They just put some grapes in a barrel and just leave it for 6.5 years and then find this really delicious wine. That's how they describe it, which is mad. I'm like, this is very hard to make.
yeah,
Look at the colour though.
absolutely.
Gorgeous.
It's definitely got a kind of rich, kind of goldeny colour to it, but there's almost a kind of, it's like greeniness to it, isn't there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like a hot weather wine.
No.
Like when you get a Sauternes, and that's a similar colour, but it's golden.
Yeah.
You can tell that this is a really rainy region. It's twice as rainy and much colder than Burgundy, even though it's sort of next door.
Interesting. And further south, or is it?
Further north,
Okay.
just, I think.
So that, if I was smelling up blinds, I didn't know anything about Vin Jaune, I would immediately think something in the sherry family.
Definitely, that's what I just thought. It smells just like a sherry. It smells like Christmas.
Mm.
I'm almost scared to taste it because I hate sherry.
Well, so yeah, and actually interesting, you've got multiple styles of sherry, don't you? And actually, I think for a long time, especially, sherry was the thing which was in your grand's cupboard somewhere, and it usually had been there for about 2 years, and so was starting to deteriorate anyway. And I always used to think sherry was this really sweet thing growing up, and I don't know why, because I'd only ever smelled dry styles of sherry, but you do have kind of very sweet styles like Pedro Jimenez and PX and things like that. But then you've got the very dry styles as well, which is where this kind of smell is closer to, right?
Yeah, and dry sherry is, even though I don't love it, I can really appreciate it because you can taste and smell so many wonderful flavours coming out of it. And because you don't have that sweetness, it's really easy drinking. I've grown up watching a lot of Frasier and he was the show. I think that would be the type of sherry you'd have.
So aside from sherry, what's that? Describe this nose and this kind of palate is. I'll let you kind of split out first. Yeah, describe what this smells and tastes like.
Oh, bizarre. Lots of wood inside there. It smells very aged. Smells like a sherry.
Oh.
You can still get that sort of like fresh lemony apple, but it's so hidden under so many layers of that aging and barrel.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. I want to say a little bit, without it sounding like a bad description, like a really delicious vinegar.
Mm.
Like
I
a
get
really
what you mean.
nice one.
Interestingly, so I suppose you get a lot of, I guess, kind of the natural wine world. You get a lot of kind of skin contact, amphora, Cavevri made stuff, which can end up having some of these sorts of notes to them. And I expect with those wines, they often seem to be skin contact, so you get the kind of big phenolics as well. And actually, this doesn't have that. It doesn't feel tannic. It doesn't really feel immediately tannic. It doesn't have a kind of big drying grip to it at all. And actually, on the palate, it feels far more like a white wine. If you weren't smelling these aromas, you'd probably think it's very normal white wine.
It feels so balanced in terms of that. Like everything just seems to line up really nicely. It feels incredibly fresh.
Yeah.
Complete opposite of tannin. It's juicy, it's fresh, it's
Yeah.
supple, but it's got this sort of real character behind it, and it feels great on the palate. It's got a really long length, but really soft as well. It's almost sort of caramelly.
Yeah. It's
like
got
a glaze, a honey glaze.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without the sweetness.
It's got a real spice to it on the nose as well, hasn't it? It's a kind of mixture of.
Well, it reminds me of, because I was a bit shocked when I found out for the first time this was in the same family as Gewürztraminer, but you can almost tell when it's in this style, it's that spice behind it.
Yeah, it's kind of amplified up so much. And you know, interestingly, the back of here, and I don't always think backs of labels are the most indicative, because winemakers are often drinking varied wines a lot, and so we'll notice nuance a lot more than usual. They've put curry on here as a flavour, and it's not as if something to pair with. And do you know what? I can get that now. And in the palate, there's that kind of background of kind of, you know, curry powder and a very kind of quite...
Masala.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it smells, cumin.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely curry.
Yeah.
And that spice behind it as well, which sounds like a really weird thing to describe it as, because we're talking about how fresh it feels and how juicy. But yeah, definitely curry with it as well, that real... Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know I certainly, when I put my nose into a glass which is unfamiliar, you immediately kind of, it just smells foreign. It smells like, oh, that's different. What's that? Not foreign in a kind of national sense, but just kind of new to you, and you can't quite place what it is. And actually, as you start to piece together some of those aromas, actually there's some cumin in there, there's some pepper in there, you know, and it starts to make more of a sense of things.
Yeah, especially when you go from such easygoing white wines to something like that, it's a bit of a shock to your senses sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's so many wines I've had where I've thought, wow, that's a big shock, I don't like that, and then you break it down, taste all the things, and then go, actually, I really love that.
Yeah. What would you eat that with?
Everything. Curry, chicken, meats. Nothing like too dark meats, light meats. It's got that chunkiness behind it. So
Yeah.
you go for really roasted vegetables when they've got big flavours, because this can really stand up to big flavours as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. It go with everything.
I can imagine just something kind of fatty going quite nicely with that, you know.
Because of that really nice acidity, it's really fresh.
I'd love some terrine, some bread, sit beneath a tree with a bottle of that next to it.
Dream.
Perfect.
So we used to, in the restaurant I worked in with the tasting menu and pairing wines, we would often put a really dry sherry at the beginning of a meal with something really clean like seafood, and that with scallops or oysters. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so clean and fresh, and it almost tastes like the sea, that salinity behind it.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting, and definitely a different style of wine to what you may have drank before. So that is the Vin Jaune.
Oui.
Domaine du Gois. So this is again from Arbois. I think they're actually all from.
No, so these two are from the wider Jura region.
Okay, to Jura.
Arbois,
Okay.
from the smaller region.
And this one is
within that.
Pupillin. Is that a kind of subclass of?
I think so. It must be. I don't know Pupillin.
Oh, we should find out Pupillin.
No.
Fantastic. So that was the Vin Jaune. Next up, we move on to the reds. So Trousseau, I had for the first time. It was within the last year, and absolutely fell in love with it. And you know, for me, I love kind of Pinot Noirs. I love kind of cool climate wines, cool climate reds. I really like high altitude reds. I like kind of, you know, very light, kind of slightly greeny flavours in my red wines. And I remember finding Trousseau and thinking this fits into that bill. So you don't tell us a bit more about it, you know, what it is, about why I probably like it so much.
Trousseau, it always reminds me a bit of a Pinot Noir, but like those cool climate Pinot Noirs that you get, really super elegant, light in body. I mean, look at the colour on it, it's a Ribena colour, it's beautiful.
Bit
like
cloudy,
red.
touch kind of cloudy.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
Yeah.
Mine looks like it's got a bit of petulance. Got a bit of a fizz there.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I
maybe.
think you've been lucky, or maybe the glass is
Shaking
dirty.
it. But Trousseau is exactly that, because Jura is, it's not quite in the Alps yet, but you're definitely getting quite a lot of hills around there. So it does feel a little bit higher climate wine.
Just got a phone ringing 1
I
second.
know, yeah, it is mine, but I don't like to reply to people. It's a bit
Higher altitude wine.
It is a bit higher altitude wine. It's not super high altitude, but it's definitely up in the hills, cooler climates. You're going to get that crunchiness behind it. It always feels very ripe and juicy, but without feeling overbaked and jammy with what you can get with some sort of hotter climate wines.
Yeah. And Sous La Roche?
Sous La Roche, I don't know, underneath or something.
Underneath something. Because it does say that's a type that we'll have to look into that. We'll pop that into the description for you when we work out what Sous La Roche is.
Yeah, so this one is, I think it's organic, but I think it's biodynamic as well, I think. No sulfites added to it.
So no hangovers, right?
No, you'll still get a hangover. It's still 13%, unfortunately. But really interesting producer. They really look after their grapes so much, sort of hand harvesting, really picking out the best grapes in the vineyard as well. So it's going to be well made.
Fantastic. So I mean, this smells wonderful. I mean, it does have a pong to it, right? And this is a kind of pet peeve of mine. Is when you see kind of wine tasting notes on restaurant menus or backs of labels or websites and things like that, and they sit there and say, full of a summer's fruit basket of strawberries and red currants and with a touch of blueberry or something, and then you stick your nose in and it smells like vanilla.
Yeah.
And that's the very first thing you smell. It's like, how have you managed to kind of step beyond that? And I know a certain amount of that is what you're used to, but it feels less disingenuous to not say, first and foremost, when you put your nose in there, it smells a bit like a farmyard.
It smells exactly like a farmyard,
Yeah.
not just a bit. I think they're always nervous that consumers will sort of see the word manure on the back of a bottle and think, I don't really want this wine or to drink it at all, but so many people come up to me and say, oh, I really like wines that taste and smell really farmy, like a barn.
Yeah.
And this smells exactly like that.
Absolutely. But what's
Say horse.
Yeah, horse. But when you get beneath that, you do have this red fruitiness, don't you? You've got this kind of red curranciness. You've got this.
Yeah, absolutely. And all wines need that, because when you talk about balance within wine, it's not just about acidity and tannin and body lining up. It's about your flavours. So if you've got all complex flavours and wonderful things going on that's hard to achieve, you need to still have those fresh fruit flavours to balance it out, because otherwise it's just overbearing. But this has definitely got that.
Absolutely. It's got some of that kind of greeny note to it as well, or something a little bit. But just despite the kind of farmyardness, gives it a kind of freshness as well on the nose, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's absolutely delicious. That is really nice. It feels so crunchy. It's like a countryside walk and lots of brambles on the bushes, lots of blackcurrants, and a bit horsey.
That is absolutely wonderful and fun, isn't it? That's so, and actually so much of that kind of farmyardiness is not completely gone.
Yeah.
But it's more balance and harmony with that kind of freshness,
Yeah.
and it does feel like a meadow on a spring day or something, doesn't it? Some of that undergrowth still there, some of those red fruits kind of blossoming through.
Makes me want to go for a walk.
That was been a wonderful day for it, and that's absolutely stellar wines. That is
That's delicious.
Domaine de la Borde, Julien Maréchal. Oh, how do you pronounce that?
Maréchal.
Maréchal. Is it Julien?
Julien.
Julien Maréchal. That is very good, very, very nice wine indeed. I'll be looking forward to
That is delicious.
taking that home with me later.
So delicious. It's one of those Moorish wines where you just want to have another 5 glasses of it straight away.
Yeah,
Such easy drinking.
so easy.
The tannin on it was quite low,
Yeah.
and it felt juicy.
Yeah. Pairing with, what would you eat it with?
Ooh. Meats.
Meats.
Cheese board,
Mm.
charcuterie board. Even though it doesn't have loads of tannins there, it's almost acting like a chutney, but still farmy with it at the same time.
Nice.
So it's really good with that.
I like that.
And to be honest, any food would be amazing with that. I think like Mediterranean vegetables thrown up with lots of herbs, very Provençal food.
I can actually imagine kind of, that alongside a barbecue, people would say barbecue wines, and I think that would suit it really well, even though, you could expect some kind of quite big flavours from a barbecue.
Yeah, it'd be a great summer wine. I mean, I'd drink it all through winter, but...
So we cut out there. Hopefully that's going to be fine. We won't notice those things, and hopefully I the whole clip. So we finished talking about Trousseau, the wonderful bottle it was. Really light, crunchy.
Delicious.
Next, Pinot Noir. The most fussy grape in the entire world.
Yeah.
Why is it?
Pinot Noir is such a wonderful grape variety, and so many people have a Pinot Noir and think, oh, that wasn't really that amazing. But when you have a cheaper Pinot Noir, it's so fussy, it's really difficult to look after, it doesn't grow everywhere. So you can make a cheap one and it's not really that exciting. But when you make a really, really good one and take really great care of it, it suddenly steps up a level and becomes wonderful. So quite often with grapes, you can have sort of different price points for the same grape, and it'll still be quite similar within all of those. But for Pinot Noir, there's such a huge difference between paying that little bit extra for one, which you have very kindly done here. But it's really, really fussy, really difficult to grow. It takes a lot of labour to make it really good. So you have to really know your winemaking to make a good Pinot Noir, which is what they've done here. This one's going to be a bit funkier because it's unfiltered, indigenous yeasts.
Classic.
Love indigenous yeasts. And even when you look at it, you can already tell that it's super, super funky. It looks like velvet.
So who made this wine?
So this one is Domaine de Bodine.
Bodine.
And it is, I think it's quite a small producer, this one. There's not many bottles out there of this one, actually, is there?
No, we were incredibly limited. The maximum number we were able to buy was 6.
Wow.
So we've got one of our 6 allocated, which means there'll be 5 for sale for you guys. I love Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I know it's boringly classic, but I think Red Burgundy is the greatest joy in the world, and in part because half of them you kind of really disappointed by. You know, half of them are ethereal, and you find one and you get the thing which you're searching for, and the other half, which are, you know, could be the same producer, could be the same plot of land, and you just think that just tastes terrible. Yeah, Ribena.
Yeah.
Jura, I find kind of more consistently good. Maybe it's because there's less of it around. Maybe it's because only the good bottles come to England. I don't know, but I find better consistency with Pinot Noir from Jura.
I think because there's no sort of really big vineyards in Jura, it's all very much small producers really focused on what they're doing. So it's not mass market wines, which is why you're not getting sort of rubbish Pinot Noirs out there. You're getting a lot of thought behind your wine. This one does not look like a Pinot Noir at all there in the glass. It looks like a Cab Sauv, but cloudy. It's so dark in colour, especially compared to this one. Completely different colour. It doesn't even look like liquid. It looks like, yeah, it looks like crushed velvet.
Yeah. So let's taste it. What's the smell like?
There's loads going on inside there. It's so hard to pinpoint it because there's so much going on, and it's so well layered on top of each other and well integrated that it's almost really hard to actually say what's in it. But red fruits, licorice.
For me, there's that kind of blueberryness to it, but then there's also kind of a greeny undergrowthiness to it. Not in that kind of, you know, fresh, wet spring morning which the Trousseau had. More of a kind of quite darkness to it, almost in a certain way. So that farmyard again.
Yeah, definitely, but not as much as the last one. This is really nicely sort of mixed in there with everything else going on.
Yeah.
Simple things, complex things, all mixed together. I think it's like a countryside walk with lots of bramble bushes and crunchy fruits, undergrowth, and horsiness as well. It's delicious. It smells wonderful.
Now on the palate, that's one of the most interesting. You know, that's almost at Vin Jaune, I can't pronounce those letters. It's still at that level, almost, of kind of weirdness in the mouth and complexity in the mouth. You've got a kind of spritz. You've got the kind of, there's almost, it suddenly kind of tastes almost, there's almost a bit where it tastes quite thin, and then this kind of wall of texture comes from somewhere.
Explodes.
And actually, I've kind of got quite a meatiness now in the palate.
I get what you mean then. It's salami-ish.
Yeah, a bit salami-ish.
Black pepper, spicy.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. When you smell it, you can tell loads is going to be going on. But then as soon as you taste it, it just all comes out, it's released. It's wonderful. It's one of those wines where it's such a full experience in itself that you just want to have a sip and then just sit quietly for 5 minutes just thinking about what on earth is going on your palate.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't pair that with food. If I did, maybe a bit of kind of some ham, some salami or something.
Yeah, but it's such an experience in itself. You don't need to pair it with food. You can just sit there and just, even in conversation, just think about it for ages. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And the development as well. It's not just, sometimes you have a wine, you taste it, you get that same flavour for about 4 seconds and it disappears. But this one is developing as it goes. It's still there now. Is that 30 seconds later? Nearly a minute?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's changing every sort of 10 seconds as it goes.
Fantastic.
That spritz.
Fantastic. So, Jura, what a region.
Wow.
And we've really got 5 different styles of wine here, and even amongst the kind of reds, we've got 2 very different reds.
Yeah. I was reading an article and someone said Jura is just, when you taste the wines, it's like a kaleidoscope of flavours going on. It's just so much going on, so much richness in it. Please don't look at my notes because I can't spell kaleidoscope.
Fantastic. So, to have a taste at home, if you've never had Jura before, let us know what you think of Jura for the first time. If you're big Jura fans, let us know what your favourites are so we can search them out as well. And let us know what you think of these videos. We're trying to make videos which work for you. And so let us know in the comments, be vocal, get in touch with us, and cheers.
Cheers!